Hi, I'm Ben Carrington from Compound Property Buyers Agency, where we help everyday Australians build wealth through property. And today, we're going to be going over some of the most common questions that we get from a lot of our investors. And we want to share this from the point to help as many investors as we can, because I'm sure if we're getting asked this all the time, it's something that might be on your mind. And to help us go through these questions, I've got our Head of Research and Strategy, Adam Young from Compound Property. Welcome again to the studio, Adam.
Thank you for having me, Ben, as always.
Absolute pleasure. So tell me, what are we going to run through today?
Yeah, so I mean, look, in my role, naturally, I answer hundreds of questions a day, even, and it's normal and it's good. You know, clients should be asking questions because a lot of this is new to them, and that's the only way that they get comfortable with buying a property.
Definitely, it's a big decision. There's a lot to consider.
And plenty to consider. So what I thought might be helpful is I've kind of just pulled out 5 very common questions.
Yep.
And we can unpack them today.
Yep. Beautiful. All right. Well, tell me, what's the first one that we get?
Yes. So the first question that we often get asked is now a good time to be buying?
Yeah, and it's a really interesting one. And whenever I'm asked that question, my answer, obviously, I'm a buyer's agent, right? So my answer is always yes. But I don't say that from a buyer's perspective. The reason is, well, it's not always yes, sorry. It's actually, it depends, right? So people often ask that question is now a good time as far as, you know, economically, or, you know, is there a good market to buy in and everything? And the answer is there is always a good market to buy and there's always a good deal to be found, right? Even in, you know, 2008 recession, we know, or GFC, we know that there were some markets that really outperformed. So there's always a good market to buy in. But why I say it depends is it really comes down to your personal circumstances. Is now a good time to invest for you, right? So going back to those 3 constraints that we always talk about: access to capital, borrowing capacity, and cash flow. So if you're in a position where you've got a good deposit, you've got the borrowing capacity there, you can handle the cash flow, whether it be a little bit negative or neutral or whatever it might be, then if all those line up, then yes, it is a good time to invest. And you've got to be sensible. But the most important thing, and I think we spoke about it when we ran through our kind of top 5 mistakes that we see investors make, you need to start with a plan. And if you've got a plan and you've got a goal, then the timing is irrelevant. It all comes back to your personal timing as opposed to the market.
Exactly right. And look, on the flip side to that, when things line up perfectly, you might have a couple of properties under your belt and one's grown significantly and you've got access to equity to then pull out and use as a deposit. However, it may not be right for you to do it at that point in time if you can't manage the extra cash flow that's involved with doing that. Because remember, using equity as a deposit is essentially more debt, and you'll be paying interest on that. So there will be an increase in repayments. So totally agree. I think, you know, the old adage is the best time to buy was yesterday, the next best time is today. And there's a lot of truth to that, but it really does depend on your personal circumstances and just managing those 3 C's, as we say.
Absolutely. Thanks, Adam.
No worries. Well, jump into question 2. So another one that I get asked very often: how much money do I actually need to get started in investing?
Yes, well, it's a big myth in Australia that you need to be kind of rich to get started. And it's probably the thing that I kind of pride ourselves on at Compound Property is we really help, you know, we try and help as many people as we can. We don't like to be elitist. And by that, I mean, we just buy in blue chip and you need to have huge amounts of deposits and capacity to get into the market. Probably nothing I enjoy more is seeing first timers get into the market on as little deposit as possible. So if you're going to be using a buyer's agent, you're all in costs. So you're looking at deposit, stamp duty, buyer's agent, legal fees, all that. You're probably looking at around 60 to 65,000 is a deposit for a kind of $300,000 property. Now we've bought some crackers at 220. One comes to mind, and just this week 270. So it is still possible to buy less. So yeah, it's not the huge numbers that you think. Now, it's not a small amount of money, obviously, and it does take a bit of time to save. But if you know, that there is also this thing that the first deposit's the hardest. What the saying is, you know, don't save for the market, let the market save for you. So basically, the first deposit is the hardest. There's no doubt. You've got to do everything you can to get that 65,000 together. But once you do get that, you let the market do the heavy lifting. And I guess we love seeing many clients come to us with one deposit. We're actually about to get a guy in the studio to talk through his experience, but one deposit, 65K, he's now into property number 3 without having to put any more money in. So it really is about get in with that small deposit and then leveraging from there.
Yeah, totally agree. I'll probably add two things to that. So when we say you can get in, you can get a property as little as $300,000, we're not talking about going to Broken Hill and buying a house there.
Correct.
You need to be buying in the right market still, because if you're buying that property, the goal is to get that money recycled as quickly as you can to keep scaling up. So you need to be smart about what market you're buying into. Yeah. Second thing I'd say is, we've had plenty of instances where clients have come along with 50, 60, 70 grand to get started, and they have got started and they've continued to grow. Mm-hmm. However, you might even be able to look at a guarantor loan if it's available to you.
That's a great point.
And with that, you just have to sort of cover some expenses that go along with setting up a mortgage. So you could get in with as little as $5,000 to $7,000 in some instances.
That's actually a really good point. It's something we are seeing quite a lot, aren't we? We're doing quite a lot of guarantor loans.
Plenty, yeah.
Something that we've been pretty really, like, I guess, exciting and cool to see is that we can, with a guarantor loan, if you buy it well, right? Because a guarantor does 20% guarantor.
Yep.
So if you can get above a 20% uplift, you can actually remove that guarantor quite quickly. And we've had some that we've almost removed at settlement.
Well, you're looking at someone who's done that exact same strategy. So that was how I bought my first property.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we used my parents as a guarantor, and only 6 months later we removed them. We pulled the equity out and we went for number 2. So it can work, and it is something to explore if you're struggling to save for your first deposit, but you want to crack into the market.
Definitely, and I think that purchase that you made, I mean, just we may as well just go into that just because there's so many things. So it was a unit.
It was,
and it was not pretty. Let's be honest.
No, it wasn't.
It was in a rough area.
Yep.
Very good.
Yep.
And it was how much when you bought it?
We paid $290,000.
$290 in what year?
That was 18 months ago. So
that's it. It was only 18 months.
18 months ago.
There you
so
go.
That would have been 2024.
2024.
Yeah.
And what have we just had it revalued at?
I just got it revalued at $600,000.
$600,000.
Yeah.
So people would not even believe it. So you bought a unit in a rough area. It looked ugly as anything, and it is basically doubled in 18 months.
Doubled in 18 months.
Yeah.
And we've pulled the equity out, which has allowed us to leverage into multiple other assets. And what we talk a lot about with our clients is when you're starting out, you're in the accumulation phase. So the goal really for a lot of people should be to accumulate as much as makes sense for your particular situation. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm in at the moment. And just that property alone has just set the platform for me to be able to leverage into multiple more properties. I'm taking on more debt from the bank, which is great debt to have.
Yep.
And I'm well on my way. So
no, it's exciting. But it's been great to see. So well done on that.
Thank you. Yeah. We'll jump into question number 3. So why use a buyer's agent and why can't I just buy by myself?
Yeah. And look, we do get this question a bit, and for good reason. There is a fee attached to a buyer's agent, but I'll tell you a few things, my thoughts on that, right? Obviously, I'm very biased being a buyer's agent, but the landscape has really changed, and it might sound like a sales pitch, but if you ask anyone, and we see it a fair bit, trying to buy a property in the right market is very, very difficult these days, right? Because a lot of people have access to data. There's a huge uptake of investors around the country. Everyone's starting to wake up to, just of how good opportunity property investing can be, and as a result, getting access to good properties is extremely difficult. Agents, they're not the most pleasant people to deal with either, and I think people forget about that. They are there to get a result for their client, and if you're not professional and you're not used to dealing with them on a daily, it can be very tough. So, a few main reasons that we think a benefit of using a buyer's agent. First is not even to do with the property, actually. It's to do what we always talk about, and that's setting up a plan, right? Because a lot of people think it's about buying a property. Yep. It's actually not at all. That's the last step. The property is a vehicle to get to your goal.
Yep.
So the first thing that we need to do, and you're obviously in charge of this, is setting up the plan to know that people have a roadmap to where they want to get to. Because no one comes to us and says, I want to buy a property because I like property, right? They want to get to an income, or they want to get to it, buy their own rock, or there's something that they want, and that's what we're there to help them do. So the first thing is setting up a plan through a buyer's agent.
Yep.
Secondly, it's introduction to a team. Right, because we as we don't do everything, and there's people that do things a lot better than us. So setting you up with the right solicitor, the right accountant, the right broker. So setting up a team, that's a big part of what a good buyer's agent should do.
Yep.
The next one is research, and that's another part, kind of your role is finding the right areas, and there's a big skill to that, which we spend a lot of time before we enter an area, and not only do we when we enter, it's when we exit. And I think this is where people can get really wrong, because people can go, I know that Townsville's a good market to buy. I've heard how good a market it is. I don't need your help. But we're exiting out of that market now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's the risk. It's like you might be able to find the market that we're buying, but it might be 2-3 years later.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's a bit of a problem. And then the last one is access to properties, right? So like I said, we've got, what have we got? A full team of sources, and they are every single day calling agents nonstop who they've got strong relationships, trying to get access to the property, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's the biggest bottleneck that we have is buying properties is really tough. So I don't want to talk anyone out of doing it on their own, because for the right person, it is possible. It's not that it's not possible, but for those that question why I would do it, there's a lot of benefits to it.
So let's just recap that. So that's the first reason is strategy, helping people set a plan.
Yeah.
The second is building a team. So we're able to introduce you to a team that's going to support you through the process.
Yeah.
The third is research. So understanding what areas are right to be buying in and what areas you should be avoiding.
Definitely.
And the fourth is access to properties. So, there's not an unlimited supply of properties. They're not growing in our backyard.
Yeah.
Wish they were.
Yeah.
So there's four very sort of telling points there as to why, where the value add is.
Definitely. And then beyond the purchase too, like, I mean, how often are we helping clients with things that pop up because a property manager hasn't done the right thing, or have had a tenant issue or anything like that? Like, we're there for the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's a really important I've kind of pride compound property on that, because, it doesn't just stop at the purchase, right?
No.
Owning an investment property, there's a lot more that, ongoing, and we're always there for you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks, Ben. We'll jump into question number 4.
Yep.
So why would anyone sell a property off market?
Yes, it's a funny one. We get this all the time, right? When we say we buy 70, 80% of properties off market, everyone says, why would people sell their properties?
Doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah. And so just so people know what an off market is, right? On market is on realestate.com or Domain or any of the major listing portals. Basically, it means it's online for everyone to see.
Yep.
The reason people want to go online typically is to get as much kind of as many eyeballs as they can.
Yep.
They want to get as much as many people through the door as possible, which completely makes sense. However, not everyone's circumstance is the same, right? So probably the biggest reason that I see, and probably, you say it all the time, the off markets that we buy, the best ones already have a tenant in place.
Yep.
That's probably the number one thing.
And explain the reason that it's better for them to sell off market than going online.
Yeah, well, as we know, in a lot of the suburbs we buy, 70 to 80% of people are owner-occupiers, which means they're not investors like us, right? They're people that want to live there. And if you've got a fixed tenancy agreement in place, so say if you've got 9 months left on a lease, you cannot sell it to owner-occupiers because they cannot move in until that lease is finished, right? And that's a massive draw. Like, that really affects home buyers, right? Because you know, when you're looking to buy a house, it's for now. It's not for 9 months' time, right? You kind of got your plans, and it's a real setback. So that's probably the biggest reason that we see people sell off market.
Yep.
The second one that we see is it's expensive to advertise, right? And agents, it's already expensive to sell a property.
Yeah.
I should know. I've just gone through selling quite a few. The agents, it's not cheap, especially like in other states, right? Some like WA, Queensland, they can be 3% commission.
Yeah.
So that adds up. Then you've got your online advertising, photos, styling, all these expenses. So when an agent comes to you and says, hey, we can get you a buyer today without having to do any of this, it's pretty appealing for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I'll just add to that as well. So when we see off markets, and obviously they don't have to make the place look pretty and present it well and get all this staging in to advertise online. Yeah. So often we'll present a property and we can see through the clutter because people live there, right? Like they've got furniture, they've got items around the house.
We've seen some stuff.
And we've seen a few things. And so it's important to know when we are buying off market, you've got to see past that and you've got to look at the structure itself. You know, what's the, does the house have good bones? Is it in a good area? Does it have a nice plot of land? Like all those things you can see past, because once the owner moves out, that stuff's gone.
Definitely. Yeah. And like in fairness, like for a lot of our clients, it's a bit of a shock sometimes, isn't it? Some of the state of the properties that we buy, but it's all like cosmetic. It's not the structure. The structure is great. And that's where you get the best deals, right? Yeah. So it's worth buying it at a lower price, knowing it's kind of doesn't present very well now, than looking when it's perfect. Yeah. That's obviously to try and get top dollar.
Awesome. Tell me anything else on why we would buy why someone would sell a property off market.
Definitely. So the other reason is the more the more generic reasons. And I think they call it the 4 Ds: death, divorce. What do you know what the other Ds are? Or do you know?
No, I've heard the term.
Yeah, I think it's 3 or 4 Ds:
Yeah.
death, divorce, something else that starts with D. But basically, it's life circumstances, right? So unfortunately, something might happen in someone's life, and they like divorce is a big one.
Yeah,
especially with property, we've seen it. In fact, unfortunately, sometimes it's hard to get them to agree because obviously, So we see that quite a lot. People split. Right, they want to get things done quickly, so they're a lot of the main reasons that we see people sell off market.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing is there's obviously great opportunity when you're buying something off market. Yeah. We don't buy all of our properties off market. We still very much look at listed properties, and there's still deals to be picked up. So it doesn't mean if you're buying a property that is listed, it doesn't mean you're still not getting a good deal. Yeah. But good to understand some of the reasons why someone would sell a property off market. Definitely.
If I think about the best purchase I've ever made personally, it was online. Just acted really quickly. That's another thing.
Mine was online too, actually. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah. So it doesn't mean it's better, but as we know, getting a deal is so difficult that by us having exclusivity in an off market, it just means that we can secure them, and often for a better price as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Question number 5, how should I be structuring my investments?
Well, very topical at the moment. And want to preface this by saying always speak to your accountant first. Yeah. Right. And that's something we're very big on at Compound. It's just straight to your accountant. We can show you the options and what people have done, what I've personally done, what you've personally done. Yep. But you want to speak to your accountant. So there's a few main ways of structuring it. You've got your personal name. You've got in joint name. And that's actually an interesting one in joint name, because people don't realize sometimes you can do tenants in common and you can actually split the difference. So you might have 80% in your name and 20% in Mon's, for example. Yep. You've got trusts, which is obviously the real topical subject at the moment, which has their pros and cons. Yep. You've got companies, which is a bit rarer. Reason being they don't get the capital gains discount. And then you've got your SMSF, which is a really interesting one. Sometimes people don't think about that.
Yeah, one that kind of flies under the radar a little bit.
Big time. But we're seeing a lot of clients, as we know, they're buying maybe 3 or 4 properties with us and thinking that they've capped, and then they open the eyes to SMSF. And that might unlock 1 or 2 more properties in a way that doesn't impact your lifestyle as well.
Yeah, it's important to remember that, because the property may be negatively geared, but inside of your super, it's self-sufficient, because generally speaking, we'll try and get one where your contributions are actually covering the shortfall. Yeah. So no out-of-pocket, no out-of-pocket expenses that you'll actually notice day to day.
Definitely, and no impact on your borrowing. So there's a lot of benefit to that. Speak to a financial advisor or an accountant, obviously, before you kind of get into that, because there are some, there's a fair bit to consider. Yep. But I guess bringing it back to kind of how do I structure my investments, it's in a way that's going to get you to your goals. Yep. Right, so they're the different vehicles and the different options, but the way to structure it is what is going to be most beneficial to get to your goal. So if you're limited on capacity and your goal is beyond what you can borrow, then you need to think about that. If you're limited on cash flow, then maybe looking at something outside of your personal name and maybe in the super. So there's a lot of ways to think about it, but probably the most important thing is we always bring it back, get the plan right, get the strategy, and with that, make sure that you're choosing your selection on how to buy before you do it, because once you do it, it's obviously very hard to undo.
Absolutely. And I will just say as well, some people, when they come in, it's great. They have a clear goal in mind, 10, 15 years, I want 150 grand of passive income, or I want, $1 million of equity. And it's great. We can get there. We can plan it out. However, what I like to say is let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, and it's important that we take it one property at a time, and then we reassess, okay, where are we at? What has the last purchase meant? How much capacity do we now have left? What's our cash flow like? Are we expected to get any sort of increased income down the track? So it can change. And sometimes the right structure might just be in your personal name, because the property is going to be negatively geared and it makes more sense to get that tax break at the end of the financial year. Yeah. Sometimes it might make sense to buy in a trust, but all of these questions, that's our job. We help the clients get through those questions and find the right structure.
Definitely. It definitely comes down to personal situation. Most important thing is just asking the question and not acting before you do that. And hopefully, you make the right call.
Yep. Awesome. Well, they were my top 5 for today. Obviously, plenty more questions that we get asked, but great to cover off, some of the more common ones. And I appreciate you taking the time to answer them for us.
Done. Well, thanks for joining, Adam. It's been great to run through those questions. Hopefully, some investors have got some value from that. And we'll look forward to running a few more questions next time.
Definitely. Cheers, Ben.